Genevieve moved silently through the grand hallway, the polished marble floor reflecting the soft light of the chandelier above. Her steps were deliberate, her thoughts heavy. The air inside the mansion, usually so full of comfort and warmth, had grown colder these past few days, as if something unseen was creeping through the walls. Her heart raced in her chest, her pulse quickening with each step. She had to do something. She had to warn him. Benjamin was sitting at the grand dining table. His broad shoulders slumped slightly as he picked up his fork, lost in thought. His face softened when he saw her approach, a warm, inviting smile pulling at his lips. His kindness, his charm, had always been so effortlessly powerful, so effortlessly him. It was why Genevieve had stayed by his side for all these years, even when she had never quite known where she fit in his world. He was more than just an employer. He was a man with a heart full of sincerity, a man who truly saw her, not just as a maid, but as a person, someone with value. She had never had that before. In the years they had worked together, she had learned more about what love could be. Her feelings for him had changed in subtle, quiet ways that only her heart had understood. But now, she feared that everything would be shattered by the very people he trusted most. Eberechi, his wife, had always been a woman of grace and beauty, everything Benjamin could want in a partner. Genevieve had watched them together, and for a while she had believed their love was as genuine as the sparkling affection Benjamin always spoke of. But now, after overhearing their whispered conversation in the kitchen hours ago, everything felt like a lie. It was as though a veil had been lifted, and the truth, dangerous and sinister, lay before her. Her heart clenched in fear. She couldn't let Benjamin eat that food. She couldn't. It was poison. She had heard it in their voices. The conspiracy in every word Eberechi had exchanged with Kaiser, Benjamin's oldest friend. The ones who smiled in his face, those were the very ones plotting his demise. Genevieve felt a surge of panic as she approached the dining table, her feet moving faster than her mind could catch up. Benjamin caught her eye as she approached, his face lighting up with warmth, but she could see the slight confusion behind his gaze. She had to act now. She had to protect him. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling with emotion she hadn't intended to show. "Please don't eat that food." Benjamin's brow furrowed, and his hand froze midair, the fork hovering just above his plate. "What are you saying, Genevieve?" His voice was soft, a slight edge of concern creeping in. The words were hard to force out. The truth would weigh too heavy for her to carry alone. "I overheard them," she whispered, the tremor in her voice betraying her anxiety. "Madam, she's been poisoning your meals. She and Kaiser, they want to hurt you." Benjamin blinked, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief. He shook his head, as if denying reality she had just spoken. "You must be mistaken," he whispered, his voice faltering. "Eberechi wouldn't. She loves me. She would never—" Genevieve stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. "I wouldn't lie to you, sir. I swear on everything. Please, don't eat it. You have to believe me." Her words were desperate, her heart pounding with the need for him to listen. She had warned him, but he needed to see it for himself. Benjamin stood still, staring at her, the weight of her words sinking in slowly. She could see it in his eyes. The conflict, the disbelief, the pain of even considering that the woman he loved could betray him. But he did not speak, instead setting his fork down slowly. He was thinking, questioning, trying to make sense of it all. The trust he had for Eberechi, the years of affection and intimacy they had shared, suddenly felt like a lie. Genevieve's stomach twisted, but she didn't let herself look away. She couldn't. Not now. She had to show him that she was right. She quickly took the plate from his hands, the weight of a stark reminder of the poison held. Benjamin remained silent, watching as she carried the plate away. His confusion deepened, but he didn't stop her. Genevieve returned moments later with a fresh plate of food, this one safe, untouched. She set it down gently in front of him, her hand still shaking. She was doing this for him, for his safety, but every part of her feared what would happen if he didn't believe her. Benjamin met her eyes for a long moment before looking at the food, then back at her, his brow furrowed with uncertainty, but his voice was softer when he spoke again. I don't know what to think anymore. I can't believe Eberechi would do this. She felt a pang of sadness, but she swallowed it down. He wanted to believe in her, wanted to trust her, but his heart was still wrapped around the love he had for his wife. It was hard for him to let go of that belief. I know this is hard to hear, Genevieve whispered, but you can't ignore the truth. I've seen what they've been planning. Before Benjamin could respond, the sound of Eberechi's footsteps echoed down the hallway. Her voice, sweet and syrupy as always, floated into the room before she even appeared. I hope you enjoy your meal, my love, she said as she walked in, her eyes sparkling as she leaned in to kiss his cheek. Benjamin's hand tightened on the edge of the table, his grip white-knuckled, but he forced himself to smile. He was playing his part, trying to keep up the pretense of the perfect husband. Yes, he replied, his voice tight. It tastes wonderful. He could feel the tension in the air, the lie hanging between them like a thick cloud. Each bite felt like betrayal. Every moment he spent in Eberechi's presence felt like a betrayal. But still, he played along. He had to. For now, Genevieve stood by the doorway, her eyes never leaving Benjamin's face. She could feel the storm brewing inside her, the weight of their situation pressing down on her shoulders. She had done everything she could. She had warned him, and now it was up to him to decide what to believe. Would he trust her, the woman who had always been by his side, or would he continue to believe in the woman who had slowly poisoned him, body and soul? The days following the warning felt like an eternity for Benjamin. The air was thick with suspicion, and the calmness of the mansion felt increasingly suffocating. He couldn't stop replaying Genevieve's words in his head. Each repetition of the sentence, "They want to hurt you," echoing louder with each passing hour. But still, he couldn't bring himself to confront Eberechi. Not yet. His heart wouldn't allow it. The love he had for her, the life they had built together, made the possibility of betrayal feel impossible. She was his wife, his partner. She would never hurt him. Or would she? Genevieve's warning hung over him like a dark cloud, a constant reminder that the very foundation of his world was built on a lie. Despite the growing tension, Benjamin tried to carry on as normal, performing the role of a loving husband. But his interactions with Eberechi were strained, and he could feel the distance growing between them. The small gestures of affection that once came so naturally felt forced now, awkward even. Benjamin found himself avoiding her gaze, his mind constantly searching for clues, for signs that his deepest fears were true. As the days passed, the weight of doubt grew heavier. Eberechi seemed to sense something had shifted, but she remained calm, cool, and collected. She hadn't changed her routine, still preparing his meals with the same care, still offering him affection with that sweet smile. But Benjamin saw it now. There was something off in the way she looked at him, in the way she touched him. It was like she was playing a role, a part she had rehearsed so well. But Benjamin knew better now. One night, as they sat down to dinner, Benjamin could barely bring himself to pick up his fork. The food on his plate had once been a source of comfort, a simple meal to share with his wife. Now it felt like poison. He stared at the plate, unable to take another bite. Eberechi, sitting across from him, noticed immediately. Her gaze softened, and she reached out to touch his hand, her fingers light against his skin. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice warm, but Benjamin could detect the faintest edge to it, an undercurrent of something he couldn't quite place. "I'm just tired," he replied, his voice strained. "I think I've eaten too much lately." She nodded, her lips curling into a small, sympathetic smile. "You should rest, Benjamin. You're working yourself too hard. Let me take care of you." Her words, the sweetness of her voice, sent a chill down his spine. The last time she had spoken like this, he hadn't known what he knew now. The subtle, almost imperceptible way her gaze lingered on him, the way her hands moved as she served him. Everything felt like a performance now, like he was the last one to know he was the audience. "I'll be fine," Benjamin said, his tone sharp. "But I think I'll take a walk after dinner. I need some air." Eberechi didn't press him further. She let out a soft sigh and returned to her meal, but Benjamin could sense the disappointment in her eyes. She wanted to control the narrative, to keep the facade intact, but Benjamin couldn't let himself be fooled anymore. Genevieve's warning had awakened something in him, something that couldn't be ignored. The realization hit him with crushing clarity. The woman he loved, the woman he had trusted with his heart and his future, had been lying to him. And Kaiser, his oldest friend, the man he had shared so many memories with, had been in on it too. The betrayal stung. But what hurt even more was how easily they had deceived him, how deeply he had believed in them, how blind he had been to their manipulation. That night, after dinner, Benjamin did what he had been avoiding. He followed Eberechi as she left the dining room, moving toward the library, her soft steps echoing in the hallway. She didn't notice him at first, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. His mind raced as he watched her, her silhouette framed by the soft light of the lamps. She was beautiful, no doubt. Her allure was undeniable. But now, her beauty felt like a weapon, a facade. When he entered the library, he found her sitting by the fire, her back to him. She didn't turn as he approached, but he could feel her awareness, the tension in the air thickening between them. "You've been acting strange lately," she said without turning around, her voice low and calm, almost too calm. "What's going on, Benjamin?" He stood there, frozen for a moment. This was it, the moment he had been dreading, the moment he had to face the truth, to confront the woman who had once been his everything. "I know what you've been doing," he said finally, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding in his chest. "I know about the poison. I know about Kaiser. I know everything." For the first time, Eberechi stiffened. Her fingers gripped the armrest of the chair, her knuckles white as she turned to face him. "You don't know anything," she spat, her voice sharp and filled with venom. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Benjamin took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've seen the evidence, Eberechi. I've seen the recordings. I know the truth." Eberechi's face twisted in rage, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes, fear. She had been caught, and for the first time, she wasn't in control anymore. "You think you've won?" she hissed, standing up and facing him. "You're nothing without me. I've given you everything, and now you want to throw it all away? You'll regret this." Benjamin felt his pulse quicken as the weight of her words sank in. This was it. The woman he had loved had finally shown her true colors. The love they had shared, the trust he had placed in her, was all a lie. "I've never regretted loving you," he said quietly, his voice cold. "But now I'm done." As he turned to leave, Genevieve's voice echoed in his mind. "Trust the ones who truly care for you." And for the first time in years, Benjamin knew exactly who he could trust. He could trust her, Genevieve. She had never let him down. But Eberechi's final words hung in the air like a threat, a bitter reminder of the danger he still faced. Benjamin couldn't sleep that night. The weight of everything he had learned, the truth of Eberechi and Kaiser's betrayal, kept him awake, his mind racing. Every part of him wanted to confront them, to expose their lies and make them pay for the betrayal. But something held him back. He had always been a man who thought before acting, and now more than ever, he needed to be careful. The stakes were higher than ever before. The next morning, as Benjamin walked into the mansion's sprawling kitchen, he found himself once again facing the food that had nearly taken his life. The plates that had once held nothing but warmth and comfort now felt like a reminder of the poison that had been slipped in, carefully prepared to destroy him. Genevieve stood by the counter, her presence like a calm anchor in the storm that had become his life. She was busy preparing something simple for him, her hands steady and her movements deliberate, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself, as if she knew the weight of the world rested on her shoulders now. Benjamin took a seat at the counter, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the edge of the polished wood. He wanted to speak, to ask her for guidance, but the words were difficult to find. How could he ask her for help when she had already done so much for him? When had he allowed himself to lean on her, to trust her so fully? Was it love, or was it something deeper? A connection forged through shared trust and loyalty in the face of everything falling apart? "Is everything all right, sir?" Genevieve's voice cut through his thoughts, soft but concerned. Benjamin turned to face her, his heart pounding. "No," he admitted quietly. "Everything isn't all right, and I don't know how to fix it." Genevieve paused for a moment, then set the spoon she had been using down gently. She stepped closer to him, her eyes locking onto his with an understanding that went beyond words. She knew the pain in his heart, the betrayal that weighed on him. She had witnessed it all, and yet here she was, still standing by his side. She had never faltered in her loyalty, and now, more than ever, Benjamin knew he had to do something about the truth. "You don't have to fix everything on your own," Genevieve said softly. "You've already made the first step. You know the truth. And now, we just have to make sure they don't get away with it." Benjamin swallowed, the knot in his throat tightening. She was right. He had already made the most important decision of his life. He had acknowledged the truth. Now, all he had to do was make sure that the people who had tried to destroy him would face the consequences. "I don't know what to do next, Genevieve," Benjamin admitted. "I thought I knew my wife. I thought I knew Kaiser. But everything's a lie. How do I even begin to trust anyone again?" Genevieve's eyes softened and she stepped closer, her hand brushing his gently, a quiet reassurance. "You don't have to trust anyone but yourself, Benjamin," she said quietly. "The truth is all you need right now. The rest will come when it's time." Her words were like a balm to his soul, soothing the turmoil inside him. He had spent too long trusting others, placing his faith in people who didn't deserve it. But now, it was time to trust himself, to trust the people who had been loyal to him all along. Benjamin nodded, feeling a small glimmer of hope light within him. Genevieve was right. He had the power to take control of his life again. All he had to do was act. The plan he had started to form in his mind the night before began to take shape. He would gather the evidence, everything he needed to expose Eberechi and Kaiser for who they truly were. The recordings were his first step, but he couldn't stop there. He needed something bigger, something more conclusive. He needed to make sure that the betrayal they had so carefully orchestrated would come to light, and there would be no turning back for them. As the hours passed, Benjamin spent his time reviewing the footage from the hidden cameras, listening carefully to every word, every whisper between Eberechi and Kaiser. Each moment felt like a nail in the coffin, each revelation adding weight to his resolve. His mind raced, calculating the next steps, planning how he would confront them and what would come next. Genevieve remained by his side, offering quiet support as he worked. Her presence was a constant source of comfort, and Benjamin couldn't help but notice how close they had become over these past few days. She was no longer just a maid, the quiet observer in the background. She had become something more, a confidant, a partner, someone he could trust with his life. But there was something more than that. Benjamin felt it when she brushed against him, when their eyes met for just a second longer than necessary. There was an undeniable connection between them, one that had grown stronger with each passing moment of shared vulnerability. They had both been through so much, and in the quiet moments when the world felt too heavy, it was Genevieve who kept them grounded. That night, after dinner, as Benjamin was preparing for the next steps, he found himself in the kitchen once again. Genevieve had stayed behind to clean, her movements calm and methodical as she worked. Benjamin felt a pull inside him, a need to reach out, to thank her for everything she had done. "You've done so much for me, Genevieve," Benjamin said quietly, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to repay you for all of this." Genevieve turned to face him, a soft smile on her lips. "You don't have to repay me," she said. "I'm doing this because I care about you, because you're worth it." Her words sent a warmth through Benjamin's chest, and he found himself taking a step closer to her. The air between them seemed to change, the unspoken tension building as he gazed into her eyes. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the pull between them, to acknowledge the bond that had grown over the days of shared secrets and whispered fears. Genevieve stepped closer to him, her breath shallow, and he could feel the heat radiating from her. There was no more pretending, no more avoiding the truth that had been growing between them. They were standing on the edge of something new, something raw and real. As his hand reached for hers, the moment felt like it had been a lifetime in the making. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about connection, about trust. And for the first time in days, Benjamin allowed himself to feel the spark of something real, something beautiful, between them. The next few days were a blur of tension and quiet decisions. Benjamin's plan was in motion, but with each passing hour, the weight of the situation pressed down on him harder. Eberechi and Kaiser believed they were in control, playing their roles as a perfect couple, the perfect team. But Benjamin was no longer the naive man they had known. The truth was now his weapon, and with Genevieve by his side, he could feel himself standing stronger than he had in weeks. Genevieve, too, had changed. What began as a quiet partnership rooted in duty had grown into something far more intimate, something that both frightened and excited her. She had always known that Benjamin was different from the others, that he was more than just a wealthy employer. But now, as they shared stolen glances and hushed conversations in the quiet corners of the house, she felt the pull between them, intensifying, undeniable. Each moment with him felt like it could tip them into something they couldn't take back, but neither of them dared to voice it. The danger still loomed over them, and Benjamin knew that exposing Eberechi and Kaiser was the only way forward. It was only when the final pieces of the puzzle had been gathered, when the last shred of proof was in his hands, that Benjamin felt the resolve to act. And act he would. It was late that night when the moment finally came. Benjamin had set the trap. Eberechi and Kaiser would be confronted, the proof laid out before them. He had arranged everything with the utmost care, ensuring they would have nowhere to hide, no excuses to make. It was time for the truth to be exposed. Genevieve stayed close, her presence a constant reassurance. Her eyes met his as they stood together in the dimly lit hallway, the tension in the air palpable. The silence was thick with anticipation, but beneath it was a quiet understanding. No matter what happened next, they would face it together. Benjamin's heart pounded in his chest as they entered the living room. Eberechi was there, sitting on the sofa, her posture rigid, as though she could sense something was about to change. She looked up when Benjamin entered, her eyes narrowing slightly, but her smile remained intact. Kaiser stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, as if trying to appear unaffected. Benjamin took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. This was it. He had all the evidence he needed. He had already reviewed the footage, the recordings, the testimonies. There was no denying it now. "Eberechi," he said softly, his voice calm but carrying the weight of a man who had been broken and rebuilt by the truth. "I know what you've been doing. I know about the poison. I know about Kaiser." For a brief moment, Eberechi's confident mask faltered. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Benjamin could see the panic flicker in her eyes, but she quickly regained control. "You don't know anything," she hissed, her voice sharp. "You're delusional, Benjamin. You've been working too hard. You need rest." But Benjamin wasn't fooled. He stepped forward, pulling out his phone, the device containing the damning evidence. "I have the recordings. I've seen everything. You and Kaiser, you thought you could get away with it, but you were wrong." Kaiser stepped forward, his face now hard and cold. "You think you can bring us down with a few recordings? You're making a huge mistake, Benjamin. We've already won. You've already lost." Genevieve's heart raced as the confrontation escalated. She could feel the tension in the room, the dangerous undercurrents of anger and desperation. She stood beside Benjamin, her eyes never leaving Eberechi, her body tense with the knowledge that they were close to ending this. "I haven't lost anything," Benjamin replied firmly, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "But you have. You'll pay for what you've done, both of you, for trying to take my life, for betraying my trust." Eberechi's face twisted with fury, her eyes blazing. "You're a fool," she spat. "You were never good enough for me, Benjamin. You were never enough. I needed more than you could ever give me." Benjamin felt the sting of her words, but he didn't let it show. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about exposing the truth, about taking back control of his life. He looked at Genevieve, who gave him a small, reassuring nod. She was there. She was with him, and that was all that mattered. "Enough," Benjamin said, his voice growing more powerful. "I'm done with your lies. I'm done with you." As if on cue, the door opened and the police officers entered the room, their uniforms dark against the soft light of the mansion. The sound of footsteps on the marble echoed, and for the first time, Eberechi and Kaiser seemed to realize that there was no escaping the consequences of their actions. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder," one of the officers said, his voice firm, "and for attempting to poison Benjamin Holt. You're both coming with us." Eberechi's face turned ashen. She lunged toward Benjamin, her hands clawing at him, but the officers quickly restrained her. Kaiser's expression darkened, but he made no move to resist. They both knew it was over. Benjamin stood still, his heart pounding, but he felt no relief, no satisfaction. It wasn't about winning. It was about surviving, about reclaiming the life that had been stolen from him. Genevieve stood by his side, her hand brushing his lightly, her present a quiet strength in the storm of emotions that swirled around them. "You did it," she whispered. "You took back control." Benjamin nodded, but his gaze was distant. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything, Genevieve." As Eberechi and Kaiser were escorted out of the mansion, Benjamin felt the weight of the past few weeks lift from his shoulders. The betrayal, the lies, the pain, it was all behind him now. But as he turned to Genevieve, the connection between them felt deeper than ever. She had been the one person who had never wavered, the one person who had seen the truth from the beginning. In that quiet moment, as the officers took Eberechi and Kaiser away, Benjamin realized something else. It wasn't just about survival. It was about the future he could now share with Genevieve.